For pretty much all of human history, we've thought of the rise and fall of civilizations as, well, chaotic, a messy story of luck, random events, and powerful leaders. But what if that's not the whole picture? What if the fate of every society is actually governed by deep, universal laws that are as predictable as physics? So that's really the big question we're tackling today. Why do great empires fall apart? Is it just a bad roll of the dice? Or is there a hidden code, a kind of formula running in the background that we're only just now starting to see? To start unraveling this mystery, we actually have to go way, way back. The first real clue wasn't found in some modern supercomputer, but in the mind of a brilliant thinker from the 14th century. He called his brand new field the science of Umran. Its creator, a guy named Ibn Khaldun, was arguably the first person to look at history and say, hey, this isn't just a list of things that happened. He saw patterns. He saw laws. And at the absolute center of it all was one single powerful idea, asabiya. It's a word that roughly translates to social cohesion, or that feeling of group solidarity. So Khaldun's big idea was this. A civilization's strength, its very ability to survive, is directly tied to its unity. Think of it like the internal glue holding everything together. When that glue starts to dissolve and people become disconnected and fragmented, well, collapse isn't just possible, it's inevitable. It was an incredible insight, but it was also just the tip of the iceberg. Now, here's where things get really interesting. It turns out that this pattern, this need for coherence, isn't just a thing for human societies. Modern science is suggesting that it's a fundamental law that's woven into the very fabric of reality itself. And this brings us to a much bigger concept called structural intelligence. Now, don't let the fancy name scare you. The idea is actually pretty simple. It's the built-in tendency of any system, and I mean any system at all, to hold itself together, to stay organized, and to fight off chaos. It's the drive to maintain structure. And you can see just how universal this is. It's literally everywhere. We see it in physical systems, like the forces that hold a star together. We see it in biological systems, like the complex web of an ecosystem. It's in our informational systems, like a stable computer network. And yep, it's right there in social systems, in the bonds that hold a company or an entire civilization together. They're all playing by the same basic rulebook. But okay, that just leads to an even deeper question, right? If this law of coherence is everywhere, where does it come from? What's the source code for this fundamental rule? To answer that, we have to go all the way down to the bottom layer of reality. And this is where we meet something called TC space. According to this new theory, TC space is the foundational layer of, well, everything. It's not a place you can visit. It's more like the ultimate operating system that the entire universe runs on. It's the ground of all existence. And the number one rule of this cosmic operating system is incredibly simple, but also incredibly profound. It's this. To exist is to be coherent. That's it. For something to be something, a star, a cell, a society, it has to hold its structure. The moment it loses that coherence, it falls apart and stops being that thing. In a very real sense, existence is structural integrity. So now, let's put all the pieces together. When you take Ibn Khaldun's historical insights and you connect them to this universal law of structural intelligence, and you ground it all in the foundational substrate of TC space, something pretty remarkable happens. History stops being just a story, and it starts to look a lot more like a deterministic science. And this slide is the perfect way to see how it all stacks up. It's kind of like a set of Russian dolls. At the very foundation, the biggest doll, you have TC space. That substrate gives birth to a universal law, structural intelligence. And the science of Umran that we started with, that's just one specific, zoomed-in application of that universal law, focused entirely on human civilizations. Okay, whoa, don't worry about all the symbols here. What's really crucial is what this equation represents. It signals that the patterns Ibn Khaldun could only describe with stories and words can now, potentially, be described with the cold, hard language of mathematics. It suggests that history might actually be calculable. And this table really spells out that paradigm shift. We're talking about a move from a science based on stories to one grounded in math. From just looking for historical patterns to running hard quantitative numbers. And here's the biggest leap of all. We're moving from a science that just explains the past to one that could potentially predict and even engineer the future. And this is where the implications get, frankly, a little mind-bending. Because if history really is an equation, then society itself becomes something that can be engineered. And that has absolutely staggering consequences for how we think about everything from politics to justice. First off, it means history might not be so random after all. The rise and fall of nations would no longer be seen as accidents, but as necessary, predictable outcomes based on their level of structural health, their coherence. It becomes less of a surprise and more like watching ice melt into water. Second, imagine what this could do to governance. Instead of basing policy on political ideology or just plain guesswork, you could, in theory, use science to design laws and institutions that are precision engineered to maximize a society's coherence, its stability, and its long-term health. It even reframes our most fundamental ideas, like justice. In this view, fairness isn't just a nice moral concept, it's a structural requirement for a healthy society. Why? Because injustice, inequality, and unfairness create the very cracks and divisions that, according to this science, will always lead to collapse. A stable society must be a just one. And the list of implications just keeps going. You could use the same math to analyze the health of a corporation or a digital network. You could develop tools to diagnose societal decay long before it becomes fatal. We're really talking about a potential paradigm shift for all of the social sciences. So, if you walk away with just one thought today, let it be this one. This new framework reframes what history even is. It's no longer just a story that we tell about the past. It becomes a structural problem, an equation that can be understood, modeled, and maybe, just maybe, solved. But, of course, that leaves us with one final very big and honestly kind of troubling question. If the fate of our civilization really can be calculated and engineered with the precision of math, who do we trust to hold the calculator?